So, welcome everyone on Frost. It's the first game of the series between the player spawning in green to the top right position. It's Wryza. And to the top left in blue, we have our Protoss player Piscolita. Was already throwing down a pylon at the bottom of the ramp in order to wall off this area here. Well, maybe if not completely, then at least with only a little small gap for one unit to fill. So she obviously plans to expand very early on in this game, which is not very uncommon on this map, because since it's a 4-player map and the distances from one base to another, be it vertically or horizontally, doesn't really matter, are pretty far. So normally you don't really have a big problem in expanding very fast, and in this case it's even going to be a Nexus first for Piscolita and a hatch first accordingly for Wryza, and then going into an extractor and then going into the spawning pool. Piscolita has already seen everything with her little probe over here. She was a bit lucky scouting her opponent, but of course with an early probe arriving at your base as early as it did, you as a Zerg player also know where your opponent has to be. So I'm actually a bit surprised that Wryza is still moving this Overlord towards the bottom half of the map. She should actually assume that her opponent is to the left-hand position. So I actually would just take this Overlord and try to fly it like over here for a potential for a third base, maybe even over here, so if units try to get to your base, you even get a good scout of that. Or you could of course try to get to this base location, but of course you will normally use this Overlord for checking a third base over here. So yeah, normally you just want to take your next Overlord in order to get over here to get a better scouting with and a better use for this Overlord in general. So, in the meantime, the gateway sealing off this area almost completely. We have a zealot over here who will then just fill this little gap over here so that early links won't be able to get into her base. But of course, as I said before, Piscolita has already seen everything, so she knows that her opponent won't be able to throw that early links at her, so she really doesn't have to worry at all. In the meantime, getting a cybernetics core out for the later tech choices. We have metabolic boost, which is just a standard upgrade. If a Zerg doesn't get metabolic boost and instead just jumps into a direct tech choice like roaches or maybe in early layer, that would be something surprising. But in this case, early speed is just pretty normal. Actually, as early as possible after taking a third base over at that position. So, Mothership Core already on the way, and then Piscolita will have all her defenses up for now. Yeah, in the meantime, the probe's just carrying all the birthday cake for the 6th anniversary of StarCraft 2. So, the Overlord will be shot down most likely, since we have a Stalker already firing at it, and even if Wryza tries to escape, Piscolita could just move her Stalker outside and just fire it down. So this Overlord will not escape its fate. Too bad for it, but yeah, what can you do? I mean, scouting has its price as always. So Warp Gate in production, and there we have the tech choice for Piscolita, which is going to be a robo facility. So we're probably going to see some sort of immortal push, I guess. It's pretty standard in PvZ, so I guess, and especially if your opponent has spawned to the quite close ground position, which is in this case horizontally, you normally want to do an early push towards Zerg, and it looks as if Piscolita is opting for that, or for that exactly. So Roachborn incoming for Wryza, while the robotics facility is almost done, which might cause a bit of problem later on for Wryza, since she already invests a lot of resources into a tech choice that gets almost hard countered by her opponent with immortals. So might not really be the tech choice she actually wants, but of course she needs to have some beefy units to fend her opponent off in the early to mid game, and the only thing that Zerg really has at that point are roaches. So yeah, 10 roaches in production already. We have a Warp Prisma incoming first. So actually Piscolita delaying a lot of her unit production for later on, especially these really heavy-hitting immortals, which she's probably going to need in just a few minutes, but of course with some good force fields and a little bit of micro, she might also be able to fend these roaches off. It's 2 more roaches incoming, 16 more Zerglings, so it seems as if Wryza wants to get up ahead early on in the game. So both units, or both players will now meet at the middle of the map. So there's a lot of Stalkers just being out in the open, and we also have these sentries at here. But Wryza is actually only move commanding here, so loses a lot of opportunity to kill down some of these units. And now we have more Stalkers incoming while the mothership is firing from above. The Wryza decides to back up, to back off a little bit here for now. But actually with this amount of lings and that amount of roaches, I think she could really take a good engagement here. The sentries don't really have that much energy for force fields, of course some of them, but the Stalkers are also not that great against... Oh, I'm sorry for that. The Stalkers are actually not that great for... not that great against the roaches. In the meantime, we have a little harassment over here with the Warp Prism, where some units were just unloaded at the third base, trying to harass the mineral line at the third base. And now we have a big engagement with only lings and only Stalkers right outside the natural, while in the meantime we have more units warping in the main base. I think this should be a fight that Wryza is actually going to win, because there's only sentries and Stalkers, which are actually not that great against speedlings. And even here the push gets cleaned up with only roaches. So yeah, right, pretty good defense for now. So unloading these 4 Stalkers at the third base, trying to get more damage done by shooting down these drones over here. In the meantime, more Overlords just being rallied towards somewhere so they won't get into the fight, or get caught in the fire maybe. So in the meantime we have some roaches just getting over here, crushing through all of these Stalkers. But of course the push did what it was supposed to be. Grant Piscolita doing some kind of damage, and granting Piscolita the time to get her own third base up. Although it's actually a little bit late, I guess. I think she should have tried to transition into that a little bit earlier. Lots of resources piled up for Wryza. She hasn't had the chance to really produce more lava, since a lot of her queens had died in the process, and now she really has to remake them. So it's, of course, some of the lava is here, so she could actually spend it, but it's only 6 lava left. So even if you spend it all on mineral units, it wouldn't really get down that easily. So she really has to see how she will get rid of her money in just a short time. So in the meantime we have lings just trying to nibble away the third base, but it's too few of them in order to really get something done. Of course Wryza now knows where her opponent has tried to take her third base, or by now has taken her third base. Tries to make something happen with the roaches over here, but unfortunately no third base over here. So I think she was just guessing that her opponent would have taken the third base over here, and she tried to lure the opponent's units over here in order to take down that base. But yeah, there was no base, so nothing gained at that point. In the meantime, Piscolita has already tied the supply count. Trying to unload some more Stalkers with a Warp Prism over here, trying to make something done. And actually there's only a Spore Crawler in position, so only the Queens fighting these Stalkers back. But with the Transfuses they are doing quite a good job. We can actually see that 2 Queens can easily take out a Stalker without even taking a loss. So in the meantime we have more Warp Prism harassment over here, not really accomplishing much, but of course keeping Wryza on her toes and keeping her back, so she won't be able to attack her opponent more than she did before. So even taking a 4th base over here, she really needs to do that. Actually, I think she could even afford a 5th base down here, maybe even a 6th one. I mean, she has so many minerals piled up. Why not just take them if you can? So in the meantime, Wryza tried to establish a spore crawler over here in order to help her defending off these little warp prism harassments, but unfortunately it's not done yet. So she has again to get some lings over here, which is not really a big problem since lings are so damn fast. So she can even take out 2 more stalkers for free. So 2 more stalkers that really didn't do that much, except of course denying some mining time over here. But the main push down at the 4th base. So while most of her units are up to her 3rd base, now the main force of the Protoss moves right down into the 4th base, just taken out immediately before it had even the chance to really get mined. And now really trying to escape with the help of the Mothership Core, probably just cutting off most of the units with the help of the force fields. Now after the damage has been dealt, just warping back to her 3rd nexus. And now Wryza has no other chance actually than to try to make something happen herself, trying to push something. But in the meantime we have some harassment again in the main base, more stalkers being warped in, only roaches and a few hydras over here, so she's probably going to clean this up. Yeah, this is actually now her main army. Even gets the warp prism, which is actually a really good shot for her, and but in the meantime of course she wasn't really able to do anything down at the 3rd base location. Now trying to get inside the main base and the natural base, which is actually a really nice harassment over here, just splitting up her units, some units down here, some more units over here, but a big warping of zealots will probably deal with this very fast. But still, 10 probes have already died, 12, 13, 15, so this was 16, 17, wow, over 20 right now. But in the meantime we have Piscolita just going for this 3rd base, and this might cause a lot of trouble for Wryza. I mean, of course she dealt a lot of damage with the 25 probes of her own, but of course losing her 3rd base, which is actually her last mining base, if you want to say so. I mean, there's some minerals left in her main base, there are even some minerals, actually quite some minerals left in the natural base, but yeah, losing a hatchery over here and losing a hatchery over here is actually double problematic for a Zerg player, since you're not only losing the economy from these bases, but you're also losing the lava production from those hatcheries. So yeah, if you just want to spend your money into units, you just can't, even if you have a bank piled up. If you just don't have the necessary lava available, what good does it do you? So in the meantime, Piscolita just massing more army, and actually now we have an army fight where Piscolita's army is just way superior to that of Wryza. She tries to make something happen with Corrosive Bile. Actually, Piscolita even takes some of these shots, but it doesn't really matter. The Immortals just tear through everything that's roach-based, and the rest of the unit will just deal enough damage against these Hydras. Could even set up some Guardian Shields in order to dampen the amount of damage dealt by the Hydras, but it doesn't really matter. GG, and Piscolita takes the 1st game. It's the 2nd game of the series, and we're on Frozen Temple, spawning to the bottom right-hand position in green. It's our Zerg player Wryza. And to the bottom left, to the top left, I'm sorry, in blue, we have our Protoss player Piscolita, who's again going for the early pylon at the bottom of the ramp, so again opting for an early wall off and then going into an early Nexus, probably even going right into Nexus once more. That's why she sends out her first pylon probe in order to get a good scouting done, so she'll see whether her opponent already has a pool or not. But in this case, okay, she knows that the map distance is pretty short from one natural base to the other, so she doesn't really want to go into a Nexus first on this map, thus scanning a gateway up beforehand, while in the meantime we have the hatchery first going down for Wryza, same opening as before, hatch into gas into pool, while again Piscolita just gets all the necessary information with her scouting probe. But of course she knows now that she doesn't need to be afraid, since the spawning pool is not even done, so no links coming her way any minute. This spawning pool will now take 30 more seconds, so up to the 2-minute mark. Then Zerglings would have to hatch, being built and hatch, and then they would have to come across the map. So she doesn't have to deal with any sort of harassment before the 2.5-minute mark. The earliest. So that would be the earliest harassment possible from now on. These are just some handy timings to know, so you can act accordingly. And the next building just being thrown down here, it's a cybernetics core, and then again we have this little gap over here which we can fill with a unit. So Zerglings won't really have the possibility to get in. And after the cybernetics core we also have the possibility to get a mothership core, which will then help us out against Lings, because it can shoot down on the Lings while the Lings can't attack upwards. And we also have the chance of throwing down a photon overcharge, which would additionally help us with dealing with any early aggression. But in this case, Wryza decides just to go for the early scouting Lings, which you can send across the map. Just poke at the front, see what's up there, which buildings have already been built, what was the first unit that Piscolita decided to build. And of course, just maybe letting some Zerglings stand back, maybe here in the bushes, or just up that ramp so that she will get an early scout when her opponent decides to move out. In the meantime, she just takes a 3rd base of her own, which is just a natural thing to do. If you see that your opponent is already on 2 bases, you normally want to be up ahead 1 base as a Zerg player. It's just a rule of thumb. Of course, if you can afford it, you can even take more bases than your opponent, but you have to be careful. Like I said, the normal rule of thumb is that your opponent just wants, you want to have 1 more base than your opponent. And like I said, if you have too many more bases than your opponent, especially early on, it will be problematic to defend early pushes that rely just on a 2-base timing or something. So yeah, you have to be careful not to take too many bases, but like I said, 1 base more than your opponent. That's just the rule of thumb, and that's what you normally want to do and to have, unless of course you want to do a 2-base timing push, which is pretty uncommon as Zerg, because they are not as strong as the opponent's 2-base timings, and you're really all in when you're doing that. So if your all in actually fails, I mean, normally you should say that every all in that fails should just be an all in and you just lost the game then and there. But you have to say that if, of course, you manage to do a lot of damage with the supposed all-in, but it still didn't kill off your opponent, you might actually be kinda even with her. So an all-in might turn out not to win you the game, but not to lose you the game either, because you just dealt the right amount of damage. And with the other 2 races, that's actually a little easier to accomplish than with Zerg if you're only on 2 bases. So 2-base play for Zerg, and that's actually just what I wanted to say in short, is kind of weak compared to the other 2 races. So it's normally not what you want to do for too long. So sometimes delaying your 3rd base for a little, because you just want to get some more units out, maybe deal some early aggression, and then behind that aggression try to expand, while just causing some trouble to your opponent who maybe didn't even expect you to attack that early on. That's something you might want to do, but delaying your 3rd base for too long will probably hurt your game more than losing too many units in the early game. So in the meantime, I like this by Wryza quite a lot. She already researched the overlord speed, tries to get some more vision with the overlords by spreading them out on the map. In the meantime, we have the first small push by Piscolita, which is again sort of a stalker sentry-based attack. This time she doesn't really have a... No, this time she just goes for blink right away. She doesn't have a... Warp Prism this time around, but of course again this is just to deal some what is it today? This is just to deal some damage to the opponent, if possible. In this case it wasn't, but that's why she had the mothership core with her. So if she just arrives at her opponent's base and sees that she doesn't have enough in order to really deal some damage, she can always retreat by using the mothership core's teleport ability, which she just did there because she just saw, okay, that's way too many roaches, nothing I could really gain there with all these sentries. I would just lose most of my heavy gas units for nothing, and why would I do that? So just recall and get out of there. Maybe I could have done something, maybe I could have just picked off some of these units, but in that case it just didn't make sense. So I just transported back, lost really nothing, had a good grasp of what my opponent was actually doing because I saw all of her units and I already saw that she took a third base. So yeah, that's actually all the information I wanted to have. In the meantime, I took up my own third base, which would be quite a problematic thing, but here we have the rule of thumb once more. Wryza just taking a fourth base, and like I said, that's just the normal thing you want to do as Zerg. If, of course, you have the possibility to just tear down her own third base with your units, at that point in time, of course, do it, and maybe take a fourth base even behind it if you can. Even if you just see this base being built and you just have a lot of lava left and you think, yeah, maybe I could punish that. You see that your opponent doesn't really have that many units. Then, of course, you could just go for a timing push and say, okay, I have like 10 lava left, I have a lot of money banked up, just produce some units, rock across the map, and try to kill her right then and there. But in most cases, you just don't have that, and the best answer to the opponent's third base is your own fourth base. And that's what Wryza trying to do here, just trying to get more units up while her economy is just getting better and better, and then later on overwhelming your opponent just with sheer supply advantage. But of course, it's easier said than done. In the meantime, we have Wryza with a few links here. I don't really know if I like it that much. She tries to do something with a little bit of harassment, but of course her opponent is pretty close with her main army at the third base. Oh, okay, I see what's going to be. So she tries to sneak in some units over here while attacking the main force over there, forcing the Protoss to... Yeah, but this is of course problematic. Going up that ramp with a lot of force fields available is never a good thing to do. In the meantime, we have just a few links over here, but they're just the IA just going crazy with all the cannons around here, and the photon overcharge being fired up as well. So really nothing gained there by Wryza except losing a few of her own units and getting 2 probes, which was just actually not worth it. Yeah, but that's of course a bit problematic if you do a 2-pronged attack like that, because you always have to be careful what both of your units are doing. If there are some static defenses ready at that point of your attack, the problem is that, of course, you will also have to manage that attack as well in order to deal some damage, or your little small harassment force over there will just not do the amount of damage you normally want to do. So in this case, even Zealots may be dealing enough damage in order to take out that hatchery, just barely not. But in the meantime, we still have the pesky warp prism being over here. And yeah, Piscolita just doing the same thing that Wryza tried to do to her, but only a little bit more successful with a hell of a lot of sentries and force fields available. My god, I mean, it would be really a good thing for Wryza if she just had some Ravages in the mix, being able to just tear down these force fields, but at that point in time, she just can't do anything. Piscolita just walks right into her natural base, takes it down immediately, and now she can even throw some more force fields while just walking into the main ramp. So still, Wryza and her main army are not capable of getting after this little this whole army push over here. This time we have no militia corps nearby, so actually Piscolita has to be careful that she doesn't lose. Well, of course, if she deals the right amount of damage, it won't matter anyways. But if she doesn't, she will probably lose all of her army in that situation. Wryza's micro, not all of the best here. Only a few units that are actually firing at the whole Stalker force. But yeah, so many probes have gone down. In the meantime, we have another warp in down here, so more probes are already dying at the fourth base. The fourth base will probably even die shortly afterwards. And it seems as if the Stalkers will even be able to blink out towards the third base as well. So Piscolita just dealing damage left and right. 34 probes have already died. And in the meantime, even a lot of Wryza's force has already died as well. So yeah, there goes the fourth base too. Now we have only the almost outmined main base, and we only have 29 probes left. That would be quite sufficient to mine from this base over here, but yeah, I mean, that's it. She finally seems to manage to kill off that push by Piscolita, but I mean, she lost almost everything. She's just lost almost everything. I mean, it's 27 workers. We still have another warp in over here. Warp Prism still alive. More Stalkers getting in. We have Piscolita on a heavy 3-base economy. She even has a lot of resources banked up. So with every new round of warp-ins, she can just reinforce her own army with a healthy amount of Stalkers. While Wryza, really struggles even to get something done with the small amount of resources she's now harvesting every second. So yeah, okay, losing these units over here, more units being morphed over there. So again, Zealots just streaming into the 3rd base, which is totally defenseless. And yeah, actually, you see, like this is something you normally don't want to have, but there are more Zealots streaming in, trying to take down these drones. Wryza reacts quite nicely, just pulls them away, but it seems as if there's just not enough Zerg in order to rescue the 3rd base from going down. And there it is down, the natural base just being built up, but like I said, now it's almost no mining at all for Wryza, just 400, 500, 600 minerals a minute, while there's 2,000 streaming in for her opponent. So yeah, this is just trying to struggle a little bit, trying to put up a fight of some sort, but this game is actually lost. I mean, what is Wryza supposed to do from here on? I mean, her tech is still alive. I mean, that's maybe something, but she doesn't even have any gas mining going on. And her mineral mining is only done by long distance mining, and in the meantime we just have a healthy amount of army just being gathered in front of Piscolita's 3rd base, while she now takes her own 4th because she realizes that her natural base and her main base are almost dried up. Actually, main base is already dry, no workers mining here, but of course this base is also pretty oversaturated, like is the same as this one. But yeah, it just won't matter. This is just the final push that seals the deal. Nothing that Wryza has. She loves, and GG's out. Piscolita takes the 2nd game as well. So it's the 3rd game of the series. We're on King's Agent Station, spawning to the top left position in green. It's our Zerg player Wryza, who's behind 0-2, and she has to win 3 games in a row in order to take this series home. And to the bottom right in blue, we have our Protoss Piscolita. And she has all the peace in the world to decide what she wants to do this time around. Going for the pylon on top of the ramp this time, probably because this is a big, huge ass ramp, and it's very, very difficult to wall this off, even if you send out the early probe. So if your opponent actually opted to go for an early pool this time around, you might be in a lot of trouble, because even if you see it early enough, it still gets very difficult to just wall off everything over here in order to keep the Zerg out. And even if you manage to get a wall off, you just don't have any money left for any units. You won't have a mothership core out early on, and thus even if you have a wall, it would still be problematic to defend it. So, yeah, this time around we have Wryza going for a big cheese. She has thrown down a hatchery close by at the third base of the Protoss. So, while in the meantime she just goes for a spawning pool and speed early on, but of course her opponent is just seeing what's going on. At least most of it. Piscolita has already realized that her opponent is not going for an early base. She has to take a look over at the third base whether her opponent might have just snuck by a drone in order to take the base over here. Maybe I'd really like her to go back and see whether there is a third base down, or whether there is a natural base down here now. And in this case she won't even see the links. She actually tries to have a look over here. Maybe if her opponent just sneak the probe over here in order to get down the third base, not the third base. It is the third base actually, but Piscolita doesn't really know that. So her natural base over here. And now she's probably fully realized what's going on. So first links are already going down onto that towards that pylon. So we have one zealot out here. Wryza has to be careful. She really needs to take out that pylon before Mothership Core arrives, because otherwise the photon overcharge will cause her a lot of problems. Piscolita just cancels her base immediately. She realizes that she won't be able to keep it down here, and she knows that she's up against some sort of early two-base cheese. She still doesn't know about this base over here. Now she does, and now she really realizes the full potential of the push that's headed her way. Throwing down one more gateway down here. She of course has to be careful that her opponent will try to get in with a Baneling bust or something. She knows that Wryza has to know that of course there will be a wall off up at the top of the ramp. So there's the first photon overcharge. So gets that out. So Mothership Core now has to gather some energy before it's going to be able to throw down another photon overcharge. But of course, in order to get through that wall, links alone just won't cut it. So you need something with a little bit more power, a little bit more explosive power, and this is what the Banelings are going to be. So 7 Banelings being morphed, but of course the biggest problem is now just throwing them against this building wall in order to tear these buildings down and get all of the links inside. Once there's enough links streaming inside, this game will be mostly won, but it's still difficult to do that. Links or Banelings are just streaming in every one time. Okay, she actually just goes for the Zealot, and since Piscolita didn't have any units behind that Zealot, or not even trying to wall off that Zealot once more, she gets in with all of the Zerglings. But of course this is a little bit problematic now. She has to divide her concentration, her focus, and most of the links just go down to that one photon overcharge. So all of her links just doing way less damage than they actually should do, and that's actually it. I mean, this was most of Wryza's aggressive potential. Piscolita just lost no probes over here. There's more links streaming in, and of course Piscolita still has to defend her base with only a few units, but she will be able to do so quite easily now. I don't actually realize why Piscolita is not just putting a unit inside her gap over here, so the gap in the wall. So the links won't be able to move in, but the longer Wryza takes, now even just going in with a few links that won't even succeed against this amount of stalkers. Yeah, and what's she going to do? I mean, there's a spine crawler over here, there's even a drone working down there, but she only has some links left, and links just won't cut it against that army position. And the more time passes by, the better Piscolita's position is going to be. Wryza would have really needed to do a lot of economic damage with the first links she got in. So she actually managed to get into Piscolita's base quite well there, but then she just didn't manage to do the amount of damage she really wanted to do. I mean, she forced the Mothership Core to throw down a photon overcharge over here, then just retreating with her links for the amount of time that the photon overcharge was active, and then just going back in again, maybe even taking all of these links to kill down all of the units that were up here. Would have probably helped quite a lot, but in this case the execution of the cheese was just not as well done as it needed to be in order to do the amount of damage that Wryza had to do there. Piscolita just held it with ease, and now Wryza's base is just going to fall. She can't really take a base up now. I mean, she tries to make something happen, but if Piscolita just knows what to do after such an such a failed attempt of cheese, she just will take her army and walk it across the map in order to kill this off. I mean, she should really know that Wryza can't actually have anything at home that would be a problem for her. Yep, and there it's headed. Yep, there it's headed across the map. There's only a few roaches over here, but of course every unit that Wryza produces right now just cuts into her own probe production, or worker production, more likely. I mean, she's at 24 now, trying to produce some workers. But like I said, I mean, every worker she builds just cuts into her army. and then when Piscolita's army arrives, she's just going to die. And every unit she now produces will help her fend off the first push, but will throw her back economy-wise, and then Piscolita will just kill her off in the mid-game. So whatever she does, it's just done. And now even the force field's cutting off all of her army units that are just not enough to even withstand Piscolita's force. And that's it. GG! I'm so bad versus Protoss. Good job, well played, and Piscolita takes the series in a convincing 3-0.